Hello my partners in crime, and I always say that in the nicest possible way, don't I? So, today's cases, and I'm saying cases because you're going to see me in the same clothes, and I'm going to do 3 cases and an update case. They're 4 cases back to back really. It's one of the hottest days of the year in the UK. I'm having building work done at the back of my house, and you know, nail guns and God knows what else going on. So I've had to come now to Candice's, my daughter's, where I'm going to film this in this area. So you may hear the dogs bark, and you may hear the dogs coming in and out, and then dogs probably will come here. But it is a very hot day, and so I'm going to be dressed like this. So I apologise for any of the, if you know, the scenery change and stuff, but it is what it is. If I couldn't have used this, then I couldn't have done these cases at all today. So anyway, let's talk about now this Colin Pitchfork, shall we? So this is the update of Colin Pitchfork, and if you haven't watched Colin Pitchfork, I put it on here and I suggest that you watch it. Now, Colin Pitchfork, he is a manipulative psychopath. He is a killer. He killed 2 young girls, raped and murdered 2 young girls, alright? And when I done the case, I sort of thought he would never be released out, because that was the recommendations of the people that locked him up, and even the, you know, the prosecutors and also other professional people that really believed that he should never be released. Now on the 7th of June this year, 2021, he was released. Now Tracy, who is a subscriber on here, and she's like my little detective actually, really. She always messages me and I love it. She's really, really quick on whatever's happening. I really appreciate Tracy for that. And she messaged me and she said, he's been released, Pitchfork has been released. And I must say, you know, I was so taken back by it, because this man's crimes were terrible. You know, I'm going to give you some background on him, alright, because the whole case is already on here and I don't want to do the whole case again. This is more of an update. But throughout his life, Colin Pitchfork was this horrible man. He was one of these men that you would think was creepy. You know, you said it was creepy, keep away from him. He was very sexual in his way he spoke to women or about women, his treatment of women. He had also, what we call in England, you know, flashed, you know, exposed himself, should I say, to many, many women. And actually, he exposed himself to over 1,000 women before he then went on to rape and murder very young girls. And we'll go through that in a little while. Now, Pitchfork, this case, when I done this case, it was more about, because he was the first person really prosecuted, I think, for by the use of DNA. Okay, this is when it started coming into its own, this DNA. And when they was looking for the murderers of these 2 girls, they knew then it was the same person, just from the blood samples and stuff. But of course there was no databases, was there, in them days. It was just new and that. So the police that really focused on catching this man, and you know, sometimes I slate the police, as you know I do sometimes, but deservedly so in most of the cases. But in this case, you've got to praise the police officers and the detectives on this case. And actually, you know, the foresight of thinking, what else can we use? And one of them saw an article about this new DNA testing, and they thought, right, let's try this. You never know. And that's really how DNA using for criminal offences sort of came about from this case and others around at that time, but mainly from this case. So it's a really important case for that. A landmark case, really. And then you think, well, yes, at least these children, and they were kids, died, and there was something to remember them by because of what came out of their deaths. And they saved so many more people from being, you know, murdered, because it took a lot of old murderers and old cases off the street, really. And so there was a lot about this case at the time, and this is why I wanted to do that case at the time when I did it. But at the time when I did it, as I said, I never would have thought that this man would have got out, and I wasn't the only one. Many people thought he wouldn't. So Colin Pitchfork is this awful man that at this time of when everyone was being tested, it was a mass testing, the police thought, right, we're going to mass test thousands and thousands of people. And that's how then the database, came out. So that, the DNA is now stored, and that's how now old crimes have been solved, cold cases have been solved and everything because of this case. But Colin Pitchfork was such a manipulator that when everyone was doing this voluntary testing in a certain area where these girls were murdered, he sort of bribed someone, but he really did intimidate someone to take the test for him. Colin Pitchfork had said, I can't give my DNA, he said to this man, because I've already done it for a friend, so you'll have to do it for me. And the man didn't want to do it, right? He didn't. But it took weeks and weeks of the manipulation from Pitchfork to persuade this man to do that test for him. So he did it. Now the problem is with Colin Pitchfork, his character was also this creepy man, someone you would avoid. He wasn't nice to women in his way he looked at us, in the way that he would talk to us or about us. He was, as I say, very sexualized, and his whole persona was like that. So how he got caught was really because without this mistake happening, I think Colin Pitchfork would have continued on to kill more. Now I said he's killed 2, and we don't really know, do we, if he's killed any more, because he didn't want to admit it. He tried everything not to get caught. So anyway, you've got this man that's done the DNA test for him. He even got the passport photo, and in them days, you could change your passport photos quite easily. So this is how this Colin Pitchfork thinks. This is the mind of a murderer. This is the mind of a man that did not, under any circumstances, want to be caught. So then when the man went to have his DNA test done, he had Colin Pitchfork's name, but he had his own photo, really fraudulently put on this passport. So that then took Colin Pitchfork out of the picture for these murders. And then I think also on a Monday he would babysit for his wife, and so he had the child, the first child, in the car. So of course when they talked to him, his alibi was, when I was babysitting, my wife goes to the gym, and she collaborated with that. That was it. She said, of course, that's what he does every Monday. I go to the gym, and she was a social worker, his wife, and they'd had this first baby, and it was a little baby. But what they didn't know, the police, this is how this Colin Pitchfork works. Understand human behaviour. So when you've got a young girl, 15, walking down the street, and a car pulls up with a man saying, oh, I'm lost, I need directions. Right? Most people these days would think, but in them days, talking about the 80s, a bit different. But you wouldn't think, would you, when you have a child in the back of the car, that this man is going to rape and murder you? Well, that's what Colin Pitchfork did. So he's used his child as a ruse, isn't he? I'm safe. I'm a family man. And we've had a lot of serial killers like this, haven't we? Where they drove around and picked up people, hitchhikers with children in the back of their car, and then raped and murdered them. Well, that's what Colin Pitchfork did. So this man is a psychopathic serial killer. That's what he is. We now know, or we think, the reason, right, because he went from exposing himself to over 1,000 women over this time period, from when he was quite young to when he was caught, to then rape and murder of 15 and 16-year-old girls. And as I say, there's only 2 that we know of, but there could have been more, because Pitchfork is never ever going to admit anything. He tried everything to get out of this, to tell you the truth. So he's never going to admit it, so there could possibly be more. So the next girl, we don't know if he used the ruse of his child or another child to get her into the car or drag her into the car once he stopped. Because, you know, when you have someone with children in the car or a woman in the car, automatically we become more at ease, don't we? You know, our barriers drop. Oh, he's not going to hurt me. He's got a child in the car or a woman in the car. Listen, doesn't matter what they've got in the car. Psychopaths are psychopaths. He didn't care about his own kid being in the car, did he? He just didn't care. And we've had many of these, as I say, that's done the same thing. So what they're saying about Pitchfork, or why they think that he accelerated from just flashing, just being a, you know, exposing himself to 1,000 women, which is, you know, even the fault of someone exposing themselves to 1,000 women, you know, and not understanding or not caring about the consequences for his actions. Now, we know now that he was a paedophile because these were very young girls. So we don't know what else he's done, but also he didn't care about the consequences for them girls or for the people that he exposed himself to. And as he accelerated up, and they believe that being married, right, isn't stress enough anyway, right, and having the children, because these girls went missing or was murdered when each of these children or his children were born. Now listen, there's plenty of men out there that do feel a little bit neglected, should I say, when a child comes along, because children take up a lot of the time, plus the woman's body's changing and things. But listen, if every man was doing what he did, there'd be none of his bloody left. So it's not an excuse, is it, that he was stressed and he couldn't have sex and she didn't want to have sex because she's had this child, and so he goes out and he rapes and murders young girls because of his own sexual gratification. And when he was asked why he did it, he just said they were there. That means that these two girls that he murdered could have been anybody. They just could have been anybody. He didn't care. As long as he got his gratification from it, that was it. So listen, when he was arrested and stuff, and he was arrested because how he was arrested was by mistake, really. There hadn't been a mistake in this pub and someone hadn't have said anything, he would have still been going, and God knows how many people this man would have been killed, because he was very clever, Pitchfork, right? Very clever, as many serial killers are. Very clever people. He didn't want to be caught. There was no remorse here. The only remorse this man's got is because he was caught. So the man that done the test for him, okay, the stupid man, and that's what he was, that took a test for somebody else. Pitchfork was then going around, you see, he worked in this bakery, and he was going around telling everybody, I've had the test, I've done my test. It's overboard about it. But no one liked him in this job. The women really disliked him because of his attitude towards women, and also his attitude about women and how he would speak and look at you. He was very, very creepy man. So these people are all in this pub on a night out, and these girls were chatting, as girls do, and slagging him off, right, saying, you know, he's a creep, he's this, which he was. And then one of the other men said, yeah, well, you know, we understand, men don't like him either. They found it embarrassing about how he used to behave towards women. But this man that had this test for him, that took this test, said, well, you know, he asked me to take the test, and I did. Now the women in there, and it all went quiet, they never said anything that night. They never said, oh, what do you mean? They just went quiet. Now one of these women that already didn't trust Pitchfork was really concerned about this statement this man had made, and she's thinking to herself, hang on a minute, why would he not take the test? Why would he get somebody else to take the test and then tell everyone he's took the test? Now he hadn't said to everybody else, I haven't took the test because I've done it for somebody else, right? He didn't say that. He went, or once this man had done this test for him, he went and told everyone, I've done the test, I've done the test, I've done the test. To show people it's not me. So she was really concerned about that, and she went to the police. Now, about 4 hours later, and the police had watched him, and he was arrested then for it. And of course his DNA matched the DNA then what they had collected from these girls matched his, and he was arrested and charged with the murder of these 2 girls. And he goes to prison. Right, these 2 girls were Lynda Mann and Dawn Ashworth. They were both 15 years old at the time. Now, as I said, with the first one we knew that he had a child with him, okay? The second one, he could have, we don't know. We don't know if he used that as a ruse to get these girls, or to stop these girls and drop their, you know, their guard. And, you know, these were 15-year-old girls. 15. So he's gone to court, and I think he got 30 years. But then he appealed it, because they all bloody appeal it. And they dropped it by 2 years. So I think he was done 28 years. Now, at this point, it was recommended that Pitchfork should never be released, because you think, why would we release a killer, a rapist and a murderer of 2 15-year-olds, which is the only 2 we know about? We don't know if he's done any more. He's never going to admit it. And then you've had recommendations from the judge and other professional people, and actually even the prosecution who prosecuted this man, that this man should never be released. So I think in 2016 he lost his first appeal, alright? They said no. In 2017 he then went to an open prison. So you think, hang on a minute, here we go. Why is this man now in an open prison? Then we find out he's on day trips out. So now they're getting him ready, aren't they, for release. So I knew it was coming, right? But I would never have thought these people were that stupid to have really released him out. They could have kept him in the open prison. You know, less stressful, this, that and the other. Alright, so he's been educated now. That's what they're saying. He's been educated, and, you know, he translates books into Braille, which is, look, it's good, isn't it? It's good. And, you know, many people do it. I think loads of prisons actually in America actually also do that job when they're in prison. And listen, it's a really good thing for people that's blind and need Braille done. So we've educated this man though. You've educated him. You've put him now in 2017 into an open prison. You've then allowed him to go out on day releases to get him used to society, right? Because this is in the 80s, this case, I think 86. I'll check it. I think it was 80. It's in the 80s anyway. Anyway, so we've educated this man in prison. Well, look at that. Because half the people in this society can't afford to go to university, can't afford to go educated. Our kids are not even funded now to go to college, right? You can murder 2 children, a 15-year-old, you know, rape and kill them for your own sexual gratification. We're going to put you in prison, then we're going to educate you. Well, that's good, isn't it? Now, because you've educated a serial killer. Okay, and then because he's, you know, translated books from, you know, into Braille, he's this perfect man. And again, listen, he's gone up for the Parole Board. And now, you all know what I think about Parole Boards. Well, you know, I think I've got justification, actually, for how I feel about a Parole Board now. I think this just justifies everything I've been saying about these absolute bloody idiots that think they know the personality of a killer and believe that he is reformed. Because we've educated him, you see. You've educated a serial killer that was manipulative. He manipulated everybody around him. Everyone around him. You thought having 2 kids was stressful. Now you're going to let a man out in 2021 into this society. You think that ain't stressful? And if we now realise, or that is assumed, that stress, and especially with serial killers, any sort of stress can bring on this, you know, this thing. This is what he wants to do. Plus now, we know he's murdered. We know he's raped and murdered people. We know it. He's been caught by DNA. He knows it. We know him. Now you've released him out. The 7th of June of this year, a couple of weeks ago, you've released a serial killer out. This parole board. Right. The reason I've had to hold off by doing this case is because, one, I'm shocked, a bit taken back by it. And sometimes I do feel, once I've done some of these cases and I've slated this parole board, that maybe I was a bit too harsh on them. You know, I've done law. I do law in this country. I think it's bloody embarrassing. Who do these people think they are? What right have they got to release a serial killer that now you've told that you've educated? So the next body, he ain't just going to dump on the side of a road, is he? So you can find his DNA. The next body, and there will be a next body, because this man is already a killer. He's already a killer. So we may not go for 15-year-olds now, because these have all got mobile phones now. People are going to know his face. Listen, I don't understand our justice system, and I have to think it's not the justice system, is it? Because they done their job right. The police done their job right. These police officers took years to get this man. You know, we have DNA now which is so advanced that we have done everything we can to protect society from pricks like this that want to take our kids and kill them, right? And then you've got a parole board that sit there and think they know more than the courts, the people that have gone through this case, because you think that this man has been an exemplary prisoner. So listen, there was no 15-year-old girls in a prison for this man to rape and murder. He didn't flash to 1,000 men. He flashed to 1,000 women. What we know about. Now he said that because he'd done it from such a young age. So how can you say he's been an exemplary prisoner? Oh, but we've educated him. My point is, you've educated a serial killer. He now knows about DNA because he was caught by it. What's next for Colin Pitchfork? Colin Pitchfork is what he is because we all know it. He knows it. We all know it. He's been charged and prosecuted. He's been put away for it. He's done his time for it. And he should have remained in prison because he is a danger to societies. But you've got this parole board, for some reason, that think that a person that can do all that and not really have any remorse for it, he's going to sit there and tell this parole board, look at me, I, change books into brown. I've educated myself. I'm a changed man. You can't change him because he is what he is. There's no cure for what he is. And if this parole board think that this is the end of Colin Pitchfork, I think they're wrong. What you've done is you have released out Colin Pitchfork, a killer, now an educated killer, onto our streets. Now, a lot of people have done this case, and a lot of people have done this case because of how disgraceful this country is looking, that we've allowed this to happen. You've allowed a parole board. I don't know what the government's thinking. Someone needs to actually do something about this parole board. What gives them the right to put our society and our children in danger? Women in danger. Because I think his profile's probably going to change a little bit now, I do. Because he ain't stupid, Colin Pitchfork. If he does anything, you'll never find a body. You'll never find it, because he will never want to get caught. He done everything to avoid it before. So I don't know what else to say about this case, right? Apart from, be careful. And when he does do something, or he's caught for something else, right? The people to blame here are the Parole Board. Don't forget that. The people to blame are the Parole Board, because we all know what Colin Pitchfork is. Colin Pitchfork knows what he is, and he won't be able to stop. So my God, you know, the backlash that will come, not if, but when this man does something on this Parole Board. So I don't think this is the end of Colin Pitchfork's updates. I really don't. If it was down to me, I would have revoked his life licence and he would have been put back into prison where this man belongs. There's no reform for him. Okay? There's no reform. You can't reform this man. And you think stress of his wife having kids, which made him, which we assume, because that's all we can assume he did it for, because the man ain't saying why. The only reason he said why is because, well, they were there. That was it. They were there. As if they were nothing. And he dumped them on the side of the street like they were nothing. But he won't dump them on the side of the street again, because he doesn't want to be caught. But if this man does anything, the only people to blame here, you can't even blame Colin Pitchfork, right? Because he would know, as does everybody else know, that Colin Pitchfork is a psychopathic killer. That's what he is. The people to blame here will be the Parole Board. So listen, you know what to do. Thumbs up. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And I'm going to have to say this subscribe right from the beginning. Because it's better. But listen, let me know what you think about this case. Now, I know a lot of YouTubers, and if they haven't done this case, they're going to do this case. They have to. Because we need to make sure that people are aware that this man is out. And you are not safe. Just be careful. So you can follow us on Instagram, you can follow us on Facebook, and you can hear this on podcast, because I'm going to put this everywhere actually. So until the next time,